hours after President Trump announced the US had captured Venezuela's president after launching strikes on the country.
They told you it was about drugs. They told you it was about saving democracy. They lied. Something massive just happened in Venezuela, but the real story isn't on the news. US forces didn't land in South America just to arrest a dictator. They landed because of what was hiding in the Essequibo jungle. Intel satellites picked up a signal that wasn't Venezuelan, it was Iranian, and the countdown had already started. You need to see the proof before the narrative changes, because what happens next doesn't just affect Venezuela, it's coming for us. January 3rd, 2026, it starts in the middle of the night. At 2 a.m., the entire city of Caracas goes black. Streetlights cut out, cell towers go dead, the internet vanishes. This isn't a power failure, it is a kill switch. While the city is blind, the sky begins to scream. Low-flying helicopters roar over the capital, but these aren't Venezuelan choppers. At 4:21 a.m. Eastern Time, while most of America is sleeping, President Trump posts a single message on Truth Social. He announces Operation Absolute Resolve. He calls it a precise law enforcement action. He says Nicolas Maduro and his wife are in U.S. custody. He says justice has arrived. But looking at the footage, this doesn't look like an arrest. It looks like a war. Within minutes, the videos hit the internet. Explosions rocking the presidential palace, tracer fire lighting up the night sky. The world hits the panic button. Russia immediately threatens severe consequences. China puts its military on high alert. Why is the world reacting so fast? Because Venezuela isn't just a poor country anymore. It was becoming a Russian base. Just months ago, Russia landed T-160 White Swan bombers in Caracas. These are planes capable of carrying nuclear weapons. They were parked right in America's backyard. The US didn't just arrest a leader, they kicked in the front door of a nuclear ally. The White House says this is about law and order. They say they're just enforcing an old indictment. But military insiders know that is a cover story. The US military didn't risk World War III for a drug charge. They went in because of what they found on a map 3 days ago. So why did the US really go in? The media is talking about drug trafficking charges from 2020. Don't believe it. That was just the excuse on the paperwork. The real trigger was pulled 3 days ago near the border of Guyana. For months, Maduro has been threatening to take over the Essequibo region. It's a massive chunk of land next door that belongs to Guyana. It's rich in oil. But last week, satellite images showed Venezuelan tanks crossing that line. But that wasn't the red line. The red line was who was helping them. Deep in that jungle, US intelligence found something that made their blood run cold. They weren't just looking at Venezuelan soldiers, they found launch pads. Reports indicate that Iran had moved medium-range ballistic missiles into the region. Hezbollah cells, terrorist groups funded by Iran, were setting up shop right there in South America. Imagine missiles that can reach Miami hidden under the jungle canopy. The US gave a private warning, back down. Maduro refused. He thought his friends in Russia and Iran would protect him. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. The order was given not to arrest a criminal, but to stop a missile crisis before it started. The target wasn't just a man, it was a ticking bomb. But when US forces landed, they realized the intelligence was missing one deadly detail. To understand why this exploded, you have to look at what Venezuela had become. This used to be the richest country in South America. It was paradise. But under Maduro, it turned into a prison. People were starving. Teachers were making $3 a month. 7 million people fled the country. That is the largest refugee crisis in the history of the Western Hemisphere. But how did Maduro stay in power while his people starved? He used a weapon that looks terrifyingly familiar to students of Bible prophecy. It's called the Carnet de la Patria, the Fatherland card. It is a smart ID card linked to Chinese technology. It tracks everything: how you vote, where you go, what you buy. Here's the scary part. If you didn't have the card, you didn't eat. The government controlled the food boxes. No card, no food. No loyalty, no medicine. It was a no-buy, no-sell system, fully operational in the 21st century.
The US watched this nightmare for years and did nothing, but once those Iranian missiles showed up, the calculations changed. The suffering of the people was a tragedy, but the missiles were a threat. So the Marines went in, but they didn't just walk into a palace, they walked into a trap. The official report calls it a clean extraction. The reality was a bloodbath. When Delta Force operators breached the perimeter of the Fuerte Tiuna complex, they expected resistance from the Venezuelan National Guard. They expected poorly trained soldiers who would surrender quickly. That is not who shot back. As the first team moved toward the residence, they took heavy, precise machine gun fire from the upper levels. The shooters weren't Venezuelan, they were Russian. It was the Wagner Group, Russian mercenaries, battle-hardened killers hired to protect the regime when the army couldn't. Suddenly, a law enforcement action turned into a direct firefight between U.S. Special Forces and Russian paramilitary units, bullets tearing through the dark, grenades flashing in the hallways. And it got worse. From the surrounding neighborhoods, the colectivos swarmed out. These are the armed gangs on motorcycles, loyal to Maduro. They flooded the streets, firing RPGs at U.S. positions. It wasn't just a raid anymore, it was urban warfare. The U.S. forces had to call in air support. An AC-130 gunship began circling above Caracas, raining fire down on the Wagner positions to break the siege. Finally, the Delta team reached the safe room. They grabbed Maduro and his wife, dragged them to the extraction point, and got them on a helicopter. They made it out, but the body count was high, and the message sent to Moscow was even louder. American soldiers just killed Russian soldiers. The battle is over, but the war of words is just starting, and if you listen closely, you can hear echoes of something written 2,000 years ago. Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives and told his disciples exactly what the world would look like before his return. In Matthew 24, he said, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place." Look at what is happening. We aren't just seeing wars, we are drowning in the rumors of them. Will Russia retaliate? Will Iran strike back? Will China block the shipping lanes? The anxiety is almost worse than the event itself. That paralyzing fear, that is exactly what Jesus described. He called these birth pains. Think about that image. Birth pains have 3 specific traits. They become more frequent, they become more intense, and they happen closer together. 10 years ago, a U.S. raid in South America would have been the only news story for a month. Today, it's just another Tuesday. We have conflict in Israel, war in Ukraine, tension in Taiwan, and now fire in Venezuela. The contractions are getting closer together. Jesus told us this pattern would emerge. He didn't say it to scare us. He said it so we wouldn't be blind when it happened. But there's another layer to this. It isn't just about nation rising against nation. It is about kingdom against kingdom. And the economic fallout of this raid is about to touch your wallet. You might be thinking, this happened far away, it doesn't affect me. You're wrong. What happened in Caracas triggered an immediate earthquake in the global economy. Why? Because Venezuela owes billions of dollars, and they don't owe it to the bank down the street. They owe it to China. For years, China has been lending money to Venezuela in exchange for oil. They practically own the oil fields. When the U.S. announced it would oversee the country, Beijing went ballistic. They see this as America seizing their assets. In an emergency session at the UN, the Chinese ambassador didn't talk about peace, he talked about theft. And Russia? Vladimir Putin is furious. His bombers have lost their landing strip. His mercenaries have lost their contract. He just lost his foothold in the Americas. So what happens when 2 nuclear superpowers feel backed into a corner? Oil prices spiked 20% overnight. The stock market is wobbling. Rumors are flying that China might dump U.S. debt in retaliation. This is the kingdom against kingdom dynamic Jesus spoke of. It's not just bullets flying, it's economic warfare. It's systems crashing against systems.
And in the middle of this chaos, something dangerous begins to happen in the human heart. When the world feels this unstable, people stop asking for freedom. They start begging for order. And that is where the trap is set. Look at the language being used right now. President Trump said the U.S. will provide temporary oversight to ensure stability. The UN is calling for a global peacekeeping coalition. Everyone agrees on one thing: we need control. The book of Revelation warns us about a time when the world will be so chaotic that it will welcome a leader who brings order. Revelation 13 describes a system, a beast that people worship because it seems invincible. Who is like the beast? Who can fight against it? We aren't there yet, but you can see the rehearsals. Remember the Carnet de la Patria, that card you needed to buy food in Venezuela? That was a test run. It showed that when people are hungry and afraid, they will trade their privacy and their freedom for a box of pasta. Now apply that globally. When supply chains break, when war spreads, when currency collapses, the solution offered will be centralized control, a digital ID, a global wallet, a way to stabilize the chaos. This operation in Venezuela moves the Overton window. That's the range of ideas the public is willing to accept. Yesterday, invading a sovereign nation to manage its resources was unthinkable. Today, it's necessary for stability. Every crisis pushes that window open a little wider. Every panic makes us a little more willing to accept the unacceptable. We are being trained to look for a savior in the government rather than looking for the savior in heaven. This also sends a chilling message to the rest of the world. Think about the other dictators watching this on TV tonight. The leaders in Nicaragua, the regime in Cuba, the mullahs in Iran. They just watched the United States reach across the ocean, kick down a door, and snatch a head of state in his pajamas. The message is clear: you are not safe. Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly. The world will try to frame this operation as a move toward peace and safety. They will say the bad man is gone. They will say the missiles are secured. They will promise a new era of democracy. But true peace doesn't come from a Delta Force raid, and safety doesn't come from a new president. History tells us that when you remove a dictator, you often create a vacuum, and 7 devils worse than the first rush in to fill it. We might have stopped a missile crisis today, but we may have started a cycle of vengeance that won't stop until the very end. So where does that leave you? It is easy to watch this and feel afraid. It is easy to feel small when giants are fighting. But Jesus gave us instructions for this exact moment. He didn't say panic. He didn't say build a bunker. He said stay awake. First, pray for the people, not the politics, the people. There are millions of Christians in Venezuela right now who are caught in the crossfire. They are our brothers and sisters. Pray for their protection. Second, guard your heart. Do not let the spirit of fear control you. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us God gave us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. If you are obsessively scrolling the news, shaking with anxiety, step back. That is not from God. Third, watch the signs, but trust the King. The chess pieces are moving, the birth pains are getting faster, but we know who wins the game. Finally, share the truth. Time feels short because it is short. If you have friends or family who don't know Jesus, this is the time to talk to them. The world is shaking so that the things which cannot be shaken may remain. Be the person who has peace when everyone else has panic, because that peace, that is the greatest witness you have. Stay alert. Keep looking up. The King is coming.